Hi folks, if you haven't already, please subscribe and hit the bell icon. Special welcome to my new patrons, Kanku, Matophobia, Paul Minogue, Reese Carey. You can support this channel by donating on patreon.com/John D Ruddy. I'm nearly at my next goal of 50 patrons. Once I reach that, I'll be making audio commentaries of each of my history videos. Stay tuned afterwards for a very exciting announcement about Maniman. Now, on to today's John Talks. Today, John talks politics and history. So, over the last couple of years, I have seen in my comments some people saying how biased I have become, or how political my videos have become, and this has been something I have been well aware of. It started mainly with my Presidents of the United States Part 3 video, which was launched right after Trump became president in 2017 when he was inaugurated. A common comment was, it was fine up until Reagan and then it got super biased. I avoided current affairs for many years for two reasons. One, because it tends to go out of date fairly quickly, and two, because the closer to modern day you get in history, the more political it can become. And that's pretty much what happened with the President's Part 3 video. There was a deep frustration in me, and in many other people, at the end of 2016 with the victory of Trump. Not only was it an anger at Mr. Trump himself for winning, despite all the horrible things he had said and done, it was an anger at the people who voted for him, regardless of all of those things that he said. And it was also a frustration at the smug Hillary campaign, who failed bigly to win the Electoral College, and frustration at the establishment for completely and utterly underestimating Trump, not to mention frustration with the Electoral College system itself. But you know how I feel about that. So when I wrote that President's video, I was super harsh on the Republicans from the 1980s onwards, and far too forgiving to the Democrats post-1990s. When I revisited that script in 2020, I wanted to make sure I had something positive and negative to say about each president. And yet, at the same time, that's not necessarily balanced in itself. People often have a distorted idea of what being balanced is. This came up time and time again in the 2010s with news stations debating climate change, and it was seen as balanced to have a climate change advocate and a climate change denier on the panel. But that's like saying you have a 50-50 chance of winning the lottery. You either win or you don't. That's not exactly how balance works, as 97% of scientists were in agreement that climate change is being caused or at least accelerated by human activity. But that's a video for another time. Some presidents are just worse than others. We can all agree that Warren G. Harding was lousy because history has shown him to be deeply corrupt, although Harding was the first president to publicly speak out against lynching. And yet when Trump has been seen to be corrupt and actively making the country worse with the toxic atmosphere his leadership has produced, I still can't call him out for it because Fox News has told a whole pile of his supporters that anyone who's naysaying Trump is fake news. John, why do you have to be so political? What is the point of learning about history if you're not going to apply it to the world we live in? History isn't just about what-if scenarios, alternative scenarios, or who would win in a fight, George Washington or Napoleon Bonaparte. Yeah, that's fun, and it has its place, and I was a massive fan of Deadliest Warrior when it first came out.
Is deadliest.
But history allows us to see more clearly what is happening today by seeing the roots of our current problems. History is political. The old adage is that history is written by the victors. That is political in itself. The history we know is always going to be a version of history, and it's up to us to try and discern as close as we can to what the truth is or what happened truly in the past. I love history because it can be reassuring to see the mad times humanity has seen in the past, and yet we have managed to come out the other side of so many crises, not unscathed, but still. Blah blah blah, those who ignore history are doomed to repeat it, blah blah blah. We know that. Mark Twain has a wonderful quote. History doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And that, I think, is the truer statement. I look at our world today and I see 1920s Germany confident that the Nazi problem was sorted out because Hitler was thrown in jail. I look at today and I see the 1960s where so many frustrated young people had such a strong sense that a revolution was coming. But it never came. Yes, progress was made, but the capitalist system continued to consolidate power, and while progress was made for minorities and oppressed people, massive progress was also made for corporations. Today it feels like a revolution is in the air, but might it happen, or will it just fizzle out into another wave of numb 1980s-ness? Another generation grows up only to sell out the younger generation. It rhymes. The Jefferson Airplane song Volunteers, some of the lyrics. One generation got old, another generation got soul, this generation got no destination to hold. Pick up the cry. So history and politics and history. Why have I suddenly become like this? It didn't happen suddenly. It's always been there. I've just usually been a bit more subtle about it in the past. In my World War I video, I do question the wasteful human life in the imperialist war. In the World War II video, I question the ethics of dropping the atomic bombs. I've often been critical of right-wing politics, but wait till I do a video about the early years of the Soviet Union and Joseph Stalin. There's not going to be much praise there for left-wing. It is possible to have nuance in your opinions. Wow, that rain really is heavy. I decided to be less subtle about it over the years because I've grown up a bit and grown a bit more confident in my voice and what I have to say. I've spoken up because in a post-Trump world, I've realised that I can't afford to be subtle. These things need to be said out loud. If hearing these things challenges you, good. Maybe challenge yourself. Ask yourself, why do you feel challenged? I had a comment on my Civil Rights Part 2 video saying how it was good up until I hit the 1970s and 80s and onwards. Again, I'm tracing the line from the past to the present. To the present. There are many who want to believe that the Civil Rights Movement ended in 1968 because enough was achieved and they didn't need to do any more. It ended because they cut the head off the snake, so to speak. No, Martin Luther King was not the only leader, but imagine what his continued leadership could have achieved. Imagine what he would have had to say about Watergate, about President Reagan. Imagine if he decided to run for Congress, for president. Who's to know? We don't know, because he was shot dead at the age of 39. And I said history wasn't about what-if scenarios. I mean, it can be, but seriously though. Recognizing these connections and patterns help us to hopefully recognize what we can do to help things for everyone. Unless we don't want to help things for everyone. I trust my audience to spot when I'm leaning in a certain direction. I like to encourage critical thinking, but also don't be critical towards me. I joke, criticize me all you want, as long as you have a valid point. But something that is devoid of politics, at least to a point anyway, is something I'm very excited to announce. I'm expanding upon the Maniman series on my channel. Thus far, it has almost entirely been Maniman Does History, but I've decided as a parallel series to do Maniman Does Lore, exploring the lore and fictional histories of many of the things that I love. Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, and Metal Gear Solid were three things that actually really got me into history, as I would pore over timelines of their fictional histories. So I thought it might be a bit of fun to explore something else for a change of scenery. Don't worry, the history videos will continue. This is just something else too. If you wish to support this work, you can do so at patreon.com/John D Ruddy. Be sure to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Twitch, and indeed check out my website, johndruddy.com, for all sorts of cool stuff. Welcome to our new supporters, Kanku, Matophobia, Paul Minogue, Reese Carey. Thanks to all my patrons, Alexander, Arthur Revan, Arwin Dew, Brendan J. Cassidy, Brian Hembling, Chair DJ, Colton Sayer, David Stranad, Emer Gibson, Senan age 10, Frank Porter, Generic Pilot, Gretchen Sand, Helena RB, Jefferson Yates, Joshua Benjamin Heisler, Judy Friesen, Cafort, Catherine Gilks, Caithias, Kilroy McNalsty, Lapre Shea Queenvara, Marcus Booker, Matt, Mike Wise, Mundy Rico, Mr. Magnificent, Mr. Research, Classy Black Men, Mr. Easy Play 2, Mycroft, Myth Nguyen, Ollie Coors, Patrick McGrath, Rocket Wrench, Ryan Ilano, Saria Kajani, SB, Shane McDonough, Suarez, Stephanie Lentz, Talitha Brower, Tanmay, Thomas Woods, Travis Dunn. Once again, thank you. Do 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 do.